Hey everybody, welcome to the round 20 play ratings video after a bad loss, shitty loss. I don't think this will take long. I like to do these ones pretty quickly, not too much to unpack. I think we all know what round 20 was and what round 20 will be and what it'll mean. And it's just a disappointing night, and it happens. You know, you have good games, you have bad games, and this was definitely a bad game. The purpose of this video is to give every player a vote or a rating out of 10, 5 being a pass mark and above. And these will form the votes that I will use to tally up the Blue Abroad Player of the Year award at the end of the season. So the idea is I'll start the discussion here, make a suggestion on a vote or a rating for each player, and you let me know in the comments if you think any of them should be changed and why. The why is actually the most important part. The discussion is actually the most important part. So yeah, the purpose of this is not to personalize and shit-can players in their personal lives. It's all about the football. It's all about the performance. So anyway, irrespective, let's get on with it. We'll start as the team was named. Wiedering, Young, Plowman. Wieders was not a good night for Wieders last night. I think he's a lot better than what he showed last night. Ultimately, Taylor Walker was probably best on ground, one of the better players on the ground last night. And yeah, he just hasn't seemingly got the same spark about him. So he's building towards it. I have no doubt about him and his work rate and his character and his ability to respond. So I'll be looking forward to that next week. I gave him a 3. Young, didn't think he had a bad first half. I just think, everyone was down all across the board. The connection was there. Didn't seem to play with the same confidence, Young, that he has for the majority of this season. You notice it I think early in the game in the first quarter, he had a pretty, I guess what I would call a regulation mark for his standards because of the way he's been doing it all season. And he dropped it, and then you just start to see the double fist spoil. And generally I look at that as a player without full confidence in that moment. So saw that a few times. I gave him a 4 for his game. Plowman, gave him a 3 for his game. Not his best. He had a really good one last week. Probably his best game for the season last week, and unfortunately wasn't able to back it up. Had a few moments where he probably just took the game on in more ways than he probably needed to. But at the same time, you're trying to create something. You're trying to create a spark, and I think that's what it was. He tried to step through someone and turn the ball over, and an errant handball, an errant kick there, and not his night. So I gave him a 3. Then we've got McGovern, Doherty, Sard. McGovern, I actually thought he was one of our better players. His second game back, got to take into account his situation. He's also playing in a new position in the ground, and this was game 4 of that for us. So yeah, I thought he looked solid. He had a terrible turnover in the fourth quarter, which resulted in a Tex Walker goal. Then followed up with a beautiful kick on his left to Matty Cottrell with 13 to go in the fourth, which was a good way to respond. But I thought he was probably one of our better players. I gave him a 7 for his game. I did enjoy what he had to offer. He looked a lot better than last week, which was pleasing to see. And big picture thinking, got to get him into form for the rest of the year and hopefully finals. Then we've got Doc. This was an interesting one because he still had a lot of the ball. We had over 700 metres gained, but I just didn't feel he had the impact that he usually has when he wins and accumulates that much of the ball. He did have 8 clangers, and I felt that probably is why I felt the way I felt. So I gave him a 6 for his game. Sard, I really tossed up between a 4 and a 5. He ended up winning a lot of the ball offensively, but unfortunately, defensively, his man was able to kick a few goals on him. Look, Ben Keys was able to read the play really well, work off Sard. Every time Sard tried to, propel us forward, Keys would sort of hang off. They had a really good organised system, the Crows, defensively on Adam Sard. They clearly went to work on him. And yeah, I gave Sard a 5. I gave him a pass mark for his game. I'm not sure when the right time to address this is. I'll definitely address it on the Monday show. But, reports coming out that, a fan out there in Adelaide was referring to him as a terrorist was, really disheartening to see. And just a reminder that we live in a really, really fucked up dark world. It is. That's the truth. For all the social media and for all the ways in which we like to project this perfect utopian life, it's a really dark world out there, and people experience darkness and they take it out on others, innocent bystanders. And I hope that the person who did whatever they did is held to account, and I hope that, we're not here talking about it again. But the reality is we are going to be here talking about it again, because people are flawed. The world's run by people, therefore the world is flawed. So it's tough. It was a tough one to see, and I hope Sardi isn't too affected by it. But not a good situation. I gave Sardi a pass mark. Moving on, Cottrell, Cripps, Setterfield. Cottrell, very quiet early, lifted in the fourth, kicked 2 goals in the fourth, and for that reason I gave him a 6 for his game. But yeah, he really did find a way to find something. It was very good to see on a night where we were pretty poor. It was good to see, just something from someone, and I think he definitely provided that for us in the fourth quarter before the Crows ended up blowing it out. Next up is Cripps. I thought he was our best player on the night. He had the 40 plus possessions. He just worked tirelessly all night. He really did. He earned 5 free kicks. They really went to town on him. He looked really sore, but he was one of few. There were probably only 3 or 4 of them that I noticed that really tried to step up, especially in that third quarter. I thought he was one of them. I gave him a 9 for his game, and I just loved the way he kept willing himself to try and create and generate. I thought the criticism of him in the fan cams was misguided, and I think Cripps was sensational for us. So I gave him a 9. Setterfield, I thought he looked really good early in the first half, I should say. Looked really clean, seemed to just wither away as the game went on. I did think he was solid. He tackled pretty well. It was a hard game to judge because I feel like it was a tale of two halves. I thought he was really solid in the first half and just not so much in the second. So I just gave him a bare pass mark for his game. I gave him a 5. Next up, Durden, Walsh. Durden, I won't give a rating. He got injured early. Walsh, I also gave him a 9 because I thought he and Cripps just went to town, and it became pretty clear that nobody else wanted to come to the party and contribute. So the two of them just went at it, and it's a game where their stats look really nice, but it doesn't matter because we've lost the game. Probably the ball use at times hurt both Cripper and Walsh, but the way that they continued to tirelessly go at it and can continue to try was pleasing to see, and it just showed a bit of leadership there when things are not going our way, which they clearly weren't last night. Walshy and Cripps were able to really put in some strong efforts. So I gave Walshy a 9 for his game. I gave him a 4. Kicked the first goal for us on the night. Looked solid, but I think overall the small forwards, it was a loss in general. We were not able seemingly to have numbers at the drop of the ball when we were kicking forward, and we did kick that ball forward, and it was pretty predictable the way we were kicking it. So that's probably something I've noticed has been a little inconsistent over the last few weeks now, and maybe even more than a few weeks. Just our ability to get to the drop of the ball when we kick it forward. We haven't quite got that connection like we had in the very early parts of the year. So that's certainly something we're going to have to fix up. And, his first game back, so he's missed a bit of football. Hopefully he's better for the run. But yeah, I just didn't feel like we got a win out of that position. Next up, Mackay, De Koning, Curnow. I actually gave them all a 4, all 3 of them. Mackay, really not his best first half. Lifted a little bit in the second half, but just not to the standard that, I would hold Harry Mackay. And I don't think it's the standard that he would hold himself to. I think 2 of the last 3 weeks. He was solid last week, but the week before he was really down. Just wondering, is he okay? Is there an issue there? It's the part of the season where bodies are probably the most banged up, but suck it up because everyone's banged up, so not to make too many excuses for him, but yeah, just isn't playing with the right or the same force as what he was early in the season. And the other thing I notice about Harry is when he leads for the ball and presents for the ball up on the wing or up the ground, I find myself noticing that he attacks it with a lot more force than when he does go up for a mark in our forward line. I think he's a little too aware of his defenders when he's trying to mark the ball as a forward in our forward 50 and almost looking for the free kick at times. And I think he's got to work at it, stamp it out of his game, and just become stronger than the arm chop that is clearly coming his way. But I think he's a little too aware of it at this stage. That's just an observation I have of him at this point in time. But certainly something I know he'll work on and hopefully be better for it. De Koning, well, it was a big discussion. We dropped Sauce. It was pretty clear that they wanted to go with De Koning and Pitternet. the idea of it, makes sense. And the reality is with De Koning and Pitternet, when it works, it looks great and it looks genius. And we look too strong and we look too tall and too dynamic. When it doesn't work, it looks really poor. And I think last night was an example of that. I totally understand that the two of them had to play last night, especially because it was Pitto's first game back. But yeah, it's something we've only got 3 more rounds to really figure out what the mix is going to be. Because on the one hand, I do understand the idea that, having Pitto and Tom De Koning with Charlie and Harry up forward, I can understand why you want that third tall and why Jack Silvani might be missing out. But, we'll get to Jack Silvani in a moment. I don't think you can afford to miss Sauce in a Carlton team just with the way and what he provides. But for Tom's game, I think he's had a lot better. And the fact that he had Pitto there to help him out and he wasn't able to get going, it's an interesting one. I guess it's fascinating what happens when you're thrown into the deep end and it's all on you and the responsibility is entirely on you. So it could be a tandem thing that they've got to figure out, Pitto and Tom. And then obviously they've got to be able to impact when they're forward of centre. So that's something we're to work on. And then Charlie, I thought he was lively early. I thought he was lively early, but, as the game went on, he just seemed to not be able to get into the contest as what he did in the first quarter. So I gave him a 4. I gave all 3 of them a 4. Then we move over to the followers, Pitternet, Kennedy and Chera. Pitto, gave him a pass mark for his night. It was good to have him back. I definitely noticed, especially in the first half, just his body, his strength, his ability to get his hand to the ball. We did a pretty good job of winning the hit-outs. We just unfortunately weren't able to do much with that once we actually gained possession. But yeah, that was good to get him through. I'm very aware that we just need to get him through the next month and get some continuity into him. But a solid first up start without being, his best performance. But I definitely have empathy for the situation that he's in. So I gave him a 5. Kennedy, I thought he was outstanding, him and Chera, in the way that they tackled and the way that they hunted. There are going to be a few instances that, we'll remember with the missed tackles, and that was across the board, but they both laid 9 tackles, I believe, and I thought they were really strong. Kennedy's concussion was really bad to see at the end. He went really hard at that contest, and I think when you've got that stiff arm as you drop, that's generally an indicator that you're probably not playing the next week. So I hope he's okay. It didn't look good. I gave him a 7 for his game. I also gave Chera a 7 for his game. I thought he was just tough. I thought he just provided a real aggression and a toughness, and he matched the heat that we were experiencing from the Crows. So yeah, he won plenty of the ball as well. Couldn't find a way to get him anything higher than a 7, but I thought he was one of our better players on the night. Then we move on to the bench. Motlop, O'Brien, Newman and Fisher. Motlop, I gave him a 6. I thought it was a really good response from last week. Won a bit more of the ball, kicked a goal. Beautiful tackle in the second quarter. He's a young fella, so there's an understanding as to where he's at, and there are going to be inconsistencies with our young, really young players, the first to third year players. But I think he can hold his head up high. I think he contributed enough, so I gave him a 6 for his game. Lockie O'Brien, found this one a little tough. Sort of debated between a 4 and a 5. Maybe I'm being a little nice, but I just gave him a bare pass mark. I don't know. I really struggle with it. I don't know why it took so long to get to a conclusion. I guess I'll leave this one up for debate and discussion for you in the comments. But yeah, he looked really good at times, and he looked not so good at other times. I think one of my biggest bugbears, and it's not just Lockie, but all of them, when I see broken tackles, just grinds my gears. And most, if not all of them, had a moment last night with the broken tackles. And anyway, gave Lockie a 5, but I'm not really sure on that. Newman got injured, really disappointing. Not sure what it was. It was like a cut to the knee. They were talking about it on the broadcast, like the studs had cut his knee. I'm not sure what happened. It was after a really strong tackle as well, with 6 minutes to play in the second quarter. So he was done for the night. He really hadn't impacted the game significantly at the point anyway. But nonetheless, I'm not going to give him a rating because I don't think there was enough data for me to give him a rating on the game. Fish, really quiet in the first, he lifted in the second, had a really strong second quarter, just wasn't able to get himself going, wasn't able to play with the same spark and energy. He had moments, really curious with Fish, because I've watched him closely. I guess you always watch your favourite players a little bit more closely. He had that, there were moments in, before this season where he would be indecisive with what he wanted to do. And he would pitter-patter left, pitter-patter right, jab step left, jab step right, and not be able to make a decision. He had a bit of that last night. Didn't look like he was sure of what to do. Now, whether that's because whatever was up the field wasn't what he was looking for, I'm not sure. But just didn't seem to have the right or the same conviction in what he was doing when he had ball in hand. So, yeah, I gave him a 4 for his game. He's a lot better than that. He's had a really good season, a career best season, and I don't think that game is a reflection on how good he's been this year. So I gave him a 4, and then Jack Silvani, mate, I gave him a 6. I didn't want to get too carried away, but yeah, a bit of talk about dropping him. It was a statement. I don't know what the situation was. None of us do. What goes on inside the 4 walls and the conversations that get had inside the 4 walls must and will always remain within the 4 walls, no matter what anyone out there will try and tell you with their inside information. But he came in, he didn't sulk it up. He would have been really hurt to be dropped, but came onto the field and impacted and showed a bit, kicked a goal. And I don't think Jack Silvani will be missing next week's game. I think he'll be playing. So I gave him a 6. And there's the player ratings. Not very good. One of those moments where, it's just not, like I said in the review, it's just not time to panic. It's just not. Like, we're not 2021. The panic stations was more or less around the direction. I think this group is going in the right direction. I think there's still plenty to fix up. It's pretty clear. There are still inconsistencies in the game. And, we've got to be able to snap out of it, because we've got Brisbane next week, who we're going to be forced to bring our best. And I think that's an exciting proposition for what's possible up there. So let me know what you thought about the ratings. If you want to change them, let's have a discussion about it. Another reminder around that. And we'll go from there. Go the Mighty Blues.